Rush Hour Podcast. We are back another day, another week, another podcast. Last week, I appreciate all the feedback on the open call. People really liked us talking about it and how it was not exactly easy to set up. I think it got a ton of traction. I saw on your LinkedIn, you got a ton of comments, people talking about it. So we thought we'd continue that. We're two non-technical tech guys, been in the industry, been in marketing, been in business, been in tech for combined 30 plus years. Crazy to say that out loud. We're talking Twitch, Zynga, Discord, eBay, gaming companies all over the place. So we're excited to talk to you about this and all the different tools that are available. We thought spend a little time reviewing stuff like OpenClaw. But this week, both Justin and I did some I don't know if you vibe coding. I don't know if you want to call it that.
Maybe we'll call it that just because it's easiest to
Yeah, it's easy
kind
to
of wrap
call
your
it
mind
that.
around. Yeah.
We've been playing around with some tools. We thought we'd give you an update. I did Lovable, which is a sort of app web buildings, through chat, mechanics. It's pretty cool. I'll show that one. And Justin, which one did you do?
Yeah. I was playing around with finally building some artifacts in Claude, like using React Native. And I'm only saying all those things because that's what Claude said it was that I built. But I'll talk about why I built that tool and what it helps me do.
Well, great. We'll talk about that, and then we'll finish off with the court case for social media being responsible for addiction. What is that about? Let's get into it. All right. So I'll start. Lovable. I don't know how much you've heard of it, Justin, but
Yeah.
it's essentially like a open chat style where it builds you an app, a website, or whatever it is. It builds stuff for you. Not too different from Claude, but I heard good things about Lovable, so I thought I'd jump in there and do it. I work a lot of NIL work with UVA, so I built a little sell sheet for an athlete at UVA. I'll put it up right here. You can take a look at it. It's pretty cool. It like showed I prompted, hey, I'm trying to make a sponsorship advertising sell sheet for small businesses. Here are the stats I want to include. Here are all the things. Here's about the athlete. Make me a nice looking site that I can transfer to or forward to people through text, and they can, sort of decide. And it started coding, and I made edits, and it looks pretty slick for something that took zero actual coding.
Yeah.
I'm actually pretty impressed because I've tried to do that through ChatGPT, and I've tried to do it through Claude and failed miserably. I
Hmm.
did it on the similar prompts using Level, and it did it. It did it in a nice way that was mobile friendly. And then it gave me the options to, hey, do you want me to host it right here? All free. I didn't pay anything. It hosted it. And then it said it could connect to my Shopify site or connect to my GoDaddy, and it could actually port it on. I didn't use those options. I could have, just because I was being quick and lazy. This is literally in bed before I went to bed. I made this thing.
So how long did it take?
It took me, I would say 30 to 40 minutes.
That's insane.
30, 40 minutes. It came up with this. And then I'll put on what, I tried to do it on ChatGPT. It took me 45 minutes to an hour, and it came up with this. And then I took that stuff to Claude, and it came up with this one. And then you can see the difference, right? I'll put all three of them up on it right now, and you can see the difference in the work. It's pretty incredible. The level was really good. It's really usable, and the formatting and the style, I really liked it. I thought it was good. If you're out there and you're non-technical and for me, I was just thinking of like, I make these decks and I make one pagers a lot. Our time at Twitch and Amazon, it was all about one pagers. When I was at Zynga, everything was decks. So I've kind of like danced between the two. And I thought, it'd be a lot easier if it was a website that I could just forward a link and someone could scroll through it.
Yeah.
So I started that. At first it was like a PDF, and then it kind of transferred its way into an app. And I just thought it like worked well for what I was trying to do. If I'm selling to, small businesses, entrepreneurs, people that want to support an athlete or a program, it's kind of cool to like scroll through on your phone. You don't have to like get a physical piece of paper and look at it. So we'll see. I'm not sure how now I can follow up, but I was relatively happy with the amount of work that I put in, the output that I got. And obviously, no, I didn't put credit card. I didn't do any of that. It
Yeah.
did all of this for free.
Wow. So did you have to pay for it at the end, or you haven't paid for
I
anything yet?
haven't paid for anything yet. I will though. I actually will pay for something yet. I think I'll pay hosting or something like that.
Okay, just for hosting. Yeah, it's really fascinating. I mean, you hear about people using these tools, like we're trying to I mean, we have played around with them now, but now like kind of doing it in public and talking about it on the pod, which is a lot of fun. I'm curious, you think about platforms like ChatGPT and Claude as like the most powerful tools and the ones that are kind of, the best for business productivity type of stuff. But then you have this example of us trying all three platforms, and this was the easiest to use, and it's not, nearly as celebrated as a product as are the other ones. I mean, Lovable has a lovable audience. They have a lot of people who are familiar with the product, but you might imagine based on the hype that the other tools might be better or more comparable. So like, how did that make you feel about other competitors in the space that kind of like are really owning one part of the vertical, like really building out websites, or like Gamma with really great slides, or other products that are getting really good at one vertical solution? Do you think that they can still do that really well without getting eaten by these other players, or is this just an anomaly?
No, I think, or it could be the state we're in now, right? Because you kind of have to pick and choose what you're going to be great at. It's AGI is to me BS. Like it's not possible to be all encompassing. Right now, you got to pick your lane and you got to perfect that lane. And I think what the bigger, broader companies with big budgets like ChatGPT and Claude have sort of danced around all of this and said we're great at everything and hoping you don't go and try it. But I think that's ultimately where they just say, "Hey, type it in. Where this thing can do everything," but it really isn't great at. It can do everything. It's not great at everything. But I think right now, if you have a specific task that you want to do, if it's design or video or editing or whatever it is, you probably need to go find a specialized AI tool for that. Now, I don't know if that's going to maintain the future, but for now, it seems like that. And this is proof positive that that is the case, right? We tried Descript in the past. That was a little bit better, not great. Obviously the open claw thing was still TBD on how that's all going to plan out. But this level is, gives me a good idea of like, hey, you got to dig around a little bit to find the tool that you really need. So I'm curious how the artifacts thing went because I've been hearing good things about it.
Yeah, man. So yesterday, late night, I'm one of those people who like in the morning, don't even come see me, man. Don't even talk to me. But at night, I'm like, I'm alert. I'm ready. For better or worse. It's rough having kids and being like wired at night. But in any event, I've just been trying to go to like level 2, level 3 on all these platforms in terms of leveraging them to really push the capabilities of things that I couldn't do before. And so, for those who are unfamiliar with artifacts, artifacts is basically this functionality within Claude that allows you to build like tools or basic web apps based off of prompts and based off of, I guess, like data and different things that you're trying to execute for, you know, for your business, or to drive productivity, or to kind of help think through different challenges for a business, et cetera. And it helps to like create tools to do that work. And so in this particular case, I was working one of the startups that I'm supporting. We're having some difficulty on creative ideation and making sure that's kind of mapping to concepts that have worked in the past. And, we're looking at a lot of stuff, we're looking at a lot of data, but not building out a system in a way that we kind of use that to develop new concepts. So I was like, all right, well, let me see if Claude can help me with this. So initially I was like, hey, is there some skill? Because I heard a lot about Claude skills. I was like, is there some skill that you can create that will help me to do this work? And basically, Claude was like, well, actually, I think an artifact might be better. What I can do is I can build this React Native web app that would essentially allow you to take a competitor ad concept, like take the entire script, or you could describe it, put that in as a prompt. And then what it will do is, based off of our ad concepts that have worked in the past, the emotional resonance that we've had in certain concept that we're trying to tie in, our positioning, branding, etc., and basically kind of how we see the world for that product. What it will do is it will extract all of it will extract the concept for the competitor, and then it will map it to um, your brand's concept in a way that creates that actual script. So like it puts a hook in there, the body, the CTA. It talks about why it will work. It talks about like the white space of what your product provides versus the other, and it works. And it's
That's
really
cool.
cool in terms of
It's
creative
really cool.
ideation. And it's like a tool that I can also share out to that startup and like have the team work on it, ideate. So I feel like every week these tools just really open up my eyes to the robustness of their capabilities, and it's incredible, man. It's incredible. You got to spend some time. In fairness, you got to spend a little bit of time and play around. But if you're curious and you're trying to describe something you're trying to do, you can build entire workflows
It's amazing.
to improve that.
Yeah, yeah, I've gotten a lot better. I mean, obviously, like learning to use these tools has been a process, right? I think even when this came out in 22, I remember my first prompts compared to where I'm at now is like, I've adapted a lot too. Like I've really learned how to use these tools, and I can see there is a steep learning curve for this, right? If you're behind, you're really behind. Like, when I was making that website, I mean, knowing that I want to showcase all of the social media following of all the things, I went and dug up all of the analytics of like the YouTube and the Facebook groups and the Twitter and the podcasts and Spotify. I just went and dug all of that stuff up and put it into, the prompts and said, "Hey, reference all of these to come up with the visuals." That's not something I would have done in the past. I would have just been like, I just put some, like doing the legwork beforehand and saying, "Hey, here's all the stuff that I want you to do, and now you need to visualize it." And
The prompt design is so important
it is,
because that enabled you to do it in 30, 40 minutes as opposed to an hour and a half of just saying, build me a cool looking website that does this. You're like, no, here's the context. Here's all the actual data. Here are some examples of what I want it to look like. This is what the information I want it to convey. And this is like the call to actions and everything. And if you do that, then you can kind of one shot these things a little better, not completely, but get a lot closer.
yeah. And still, it wasn't totally complete. I still had to tweak a lot of it, but I think, yeah, plan that now it's more about like, all right, I want to do this thing. I need to plan a little before you just jump in and you just start typing what you want. You
Yeah.
sort of just have diarrhea of the fingertips and just whatever comes out. But now it's like, hold on a minute. I want to do a website. What do I want in the website? Let me go dig up photos. Let me go dig up stats. Let me get situated with this thing before I start prompting. And that is probably the key to, I don't know if that's the magic to it, but like feeding it the right data to get you a good result is important, right? Because I think it is easy. You're already trying to be lazy to begin with. Let's keep it real. Like not hiring and not doing these things, but you need to do a little bit of legwork on top of that to make it really, stand out. Put it that
Yeah.
way.
I push you back on the laziness piece a bit. I think like for some of the if you said, "Justin, create some type of React Native thing," I'd be like, "Man, I don't even know. Like, what are you talking about, bro?" And then, so it wasn't necessarily the laziness. It was like, I just don't even know where to start. Or I don't really know. Like now I'm kind of learning more about, okay, well, you can use building this type of tool to do this. And that's the output. Right. So it's just not knowledge I would have had. It's not like for me, I get your point around the laziness, but for me, it's less about laziness and more about I just don't even know how to conceptualize some of
Yeah.
this stuff. And then I have a conversation like, okay, I kind of understand this a little better and let's build that. And then like, okay, now I kind of, understand the full cycle of the dialogue and the back and forth that results in this.
Yeah, I'm just older, so I still think of this stuff as being cheating. Despite it not being, this is like table stakes at this point, but for me, it still feels like cheating. It's cheating on the exam, it's the notes, it's the thing. So, but whatever, I'll take it because it is a tool that is readily available. Um, but yeah, I definitely get a lot more credit for things than I should with these tools. But part of it is like knowing how to do the tools, right? We talked about it, going to the doctor and going doing all these things and just being prepped. And, now I use it for things in the past I would not have used, like responding to doctors, responding to lawyers, responding to all these things, like having same deal, like doing a little bit of prep work and getting it right and then sending a response versus just quickly typing in what you want and then getting it and copying and pasting it. And I sort of like don't do that anymore.
Everyone gets a chief of staff in their pocket, man,
Yeah, it's incredible. Yeah,
which
it's
is
absolutely incredible.
which is very cool. But like and you and I have been in and around the space and we're not technical, but like we are conversant enough and dangerous enough that we can, still figure some things out that aren't super deeply technical. That being said, you have to just throw yourself in
You
and
do.
try these tools, and there's a
I look
tremendous
at it
amount of benefit.
I think about this like if this was a sport, I am a above average weekend warrior, right? Like I, I'm still not a savvy AI person. Like it's definitely not that. But I'm not like, I'm not putting up a big number out on the golf course. I'm like decent. I'm decent. I feel like
Yeah,
the average person put them up against me, I might look all right. But if you put me up against a pro, I'm gonna look foolish. But it's still better than nothing. Like it's still like I said, serviceable. Like and now at least I know what to do. And I feel way maybe it's a forcing function of this podcast, even like us
yeah,
getting on here and feeling like this stuff is probably bigger than what it really is. And me feeling the urgency of like, I gotta go figure this stuff out all the time.
yeah. It's also
It's
because 'cause we're in the valley, and it's very palpable. Like, you're in the valley, so you're having these whether you're at a birthday party or standing in line at a supermarket, or you're just hearing people talk about this stuff all the time. Then if
yeah,
you spend any time online, with the algorithms, we're getting ingest this stuff, so, like, it just feels that much more intense too based on where we are, but I think this is the canary in the coal mine for what's coming,
it
so
is.
hopefully this is helpful for folks.
I mean, yeah, if you got into my algorithm, it's a little scary place sometimes. You think you're in a simulation. So
Oh, well, speaking of algorithms, yeah, that's probably a good
yeah,
transition
good segue.
into like the big story of the week, which was around this being the first time that a judge ruled that social media companies are legally responsible for addiction. And this can kind of change the entire industry, actually in a serious way. So, a Los Angeles jury ruled that Meta and Google intentionally built addictive platforms that harmed a teenager's mental health. The plaintiff, it was Hick Cayley, 20 years old. She was awarded $6 million in damages, split 70% from Meta, 30% from Google. And the jurors found that the companies acted with malice, oppression, or fraud, making it one of the strongest legal statements against social media companies to date. And basically, the crux was that they were negligent in designing addictive platforms that harmed kids' mental health, specifically mentioning product functionality like infinite scrolling and autoplay as mechanisms that forced compulsion, anxiety, and depression among young users. The plaintiffs argued that these companies prioritized engagement over profit of user safety and failed to warn of the risk. What's going to cascade from this, and there are already a lot of cases out there, is probably hundreds of other similar lawsuits that are moving through U.S. courts. I think the companies are going to plan to appeal many of them, arguing that mental health is complex and cannot be attributed to a single platform. But this ruling establishes the case law for all these other lawsuits, which is a huge change in how these platforms are perceived in terms of just being like a place for people to consume content, to like we are creating products that are harming kids in the same way as like cigarettes and like those
Yeah,
big type of rulings. So really, really fascinating ruling. I think the impacts of this could be far reaching.
I'm not mad at it. Truthfully, I have kids. You have kids. Would I be mad if some certain things were 18 and over, like YouTube and TikTok? I would not be mad. I agree. Like these things are like I catch myself all the time. Like, dude, I got to put this down. Like, this is not helping my life. I've heard
Yeah.
that actually. I've done a lot of user studies with people on social media for various companies I've worked for, and that's probably the one thing I heard more than anything with TikTok was that I deleted the app because I saw that I was addicted to it.
Mm.
I heard that over and over and over. Like I had the self control. I removed it off of my phone. I don't use it anymore because I thought it wasn't beneficial to my life. That's kind of alarming, like if you don't have that self control or that willpower and you don't see it coming and you're just in there scrolling like crazy, you could really, how many
Yeah.
people have lost 30 minutes an hour on TikTok? Like happens every day. And like you add that up, that's terrifying.
Yeah.
It's a lot.
Because I spent so much time in Silicon Valley and building products in and around this, like obviously I have some I think my overview of this is a bit more nuanced in that if you're a parent, like, you should curb your kid watching TV all day, right? And
Absolutely.
it's not because like and certain and there are certain platforms where you just have to be able to have self-control, and I think that that is, like, something somebody has to kind of do on their own. I don't think I necessarily blame the platform for that. I think maybe the difference here is the ways that some of these were designed, like, not just the content, but how you interact with it, with the like buttons and the infinite scrolling, auto scrolling, stuff like that. Like, those are the product features that are just incredibly addictive. And so it's kind of, for me, maybe not, that's where there need to be more guardrails than just the content itself. It's not necessarily having access to all this content. It's the other things that make you kind of sucked in, and the product features that keep you watching for a long time. So it's like less about the content itself. So that's kind of where I come out on it. I don't know if that nuance necessarily, you know, relates to, like, jives with your thinking as well. But I feel like it's hard to just say it's only the company's fault. But on the product design piece, yeah, I think that piece is squarely in,
Oh, I think the company is doing sadly, they're doing their job. They're trying to build a product. If you put the right KPIs in front of them, it is like, I want engagement, I want it to be sticky, I want to reward that kind of behavior for the content creator, and then I want to showcase more of that. I mean, it ultimately comes down to this. This is what the product was designed for.
yeah.
I think the issue then becomes who's on the other end of it, right? Having a undeveloped or developing brain, like being on the receiving end of this algorithm, that's where it's hard for companies to wrap their heads around, right? Because they're not necessarily thinking about it like that. They're just thinking, hey, I need, like, there's a fierce competition out here. I need to build a product that is very sticky, very engaging, very viral, for me to survive. So then they go build it, and they're not thinking about, like, these are young children that are looking at this. They're thinking of it as like, I just need people to like my app. And then it unfortunately turns into this,
Yeah. That's
which
a
is
very altruistic view. I'll go with it.
I
I
mean,
think I think most people I think most people aren't trying to create, like, products that harm children. So I
yes.
I I agree with you.
Yeah, they're not, I mean, I mean, they ultimately do, unfortunately, but it's like, just like you said, cigarettes and candy and soda are also that. So
Mhm.
it's like everything needs to be taken, as you said, it comes down to the parenting also, but, like, it is, yeah, the world is a tricky place right now, right? Because
It
everything is
is.
being pressed up. People don't have time. People don't have the attention. People don't have the money to do everything they want to do. And a lot of times it is, here's an iPad, kid, you go figure it
Mhm.
out. I got to work. Or here's an iPad.
Yeah.
Next thing you know, they're stuck in this whatever spiral of content.
Yeah. Infinite scroll. Yeah.
Yeah, the infinite scroll, it's a real thing. Like, I see my kids do it sometimes, we yell at them, and we know we can see it. It's also like,
It's like, "You gave this to me, dad."
yeah, it's a real problem, right? Because I can see the impact that it has on them, and sometimes it's like, this is something, I mean, in my opinion, it is something they gotta figure out how to self-regulate. I can't be the one that's gonna be on top of them all the time, telling
Yeah.
them, you gotta stop." Like, at some point, that person is gonna go away, you need to self-regulate. So I'm always, like, trying to push that, like, "Hey, did you do your homework? Did you get it done? Like, is this okay? Are you okay doing this scrolling thing? Like, you need to is this okay for you?" And then sometimes they get shaken out of it. But to me, that's where it's at. Like, you've gotta figure it out on your own, because at some point your mom, dad are not gonna be there telling you not to scroll anymore, and you have to have the wherewithal to figure it out, which doesn't isn't
And
easy.
just know that they can be harmful products in the same way as, your parents teach you about drugs and alcohol. Social media is gonna be that
Yeah,
the next
social media.
category.
Don't sit too close to the TV, right?
Yeah,
Remember that?
that's right.
Don't
That's
stand
right.
too close to the microwave either.
That's why I got glasses, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. No, no, this is really cool. I didn't realize that even went down, so I appreciate you sharing, and we'll definitely keep an eye on that. But another week. Appreciate your
Another
time.
week. Yeah,
26 minutes.
man.
We'll let
And
this go.
if anybody has any other products where you're like, "Hey, love for you guys to check this out and give your take on it," or, us non-technical folks, if it's helpful or interesting, we're happy to do that. So just add that into the comments
Yeah.
or shoot us an email.
Yes, I love it. And anything you want to hear, review, see if you have a product that you're like, I think this is interesting. Try this, try that. Hit us up. We're down. Anyway, have a good weekend, Justin.
You too, man. Later.